Sashi Buki Jurshin Etotam Rira Minshin Inde Gempadi Sangye Shindu Mite Uwagi Droku Namdak Shinla Chepasho Guru Radha Mandala Kamyatayami Chedan Soki Chonamba Chanchu Bardu Dagni Kyapsuchi Dagi Chenyen Gipe Sunamki Dola Penchir Sangye Drupasho Chedan Soki Chonamba Chanchu Bardu Dagni Kyapsuchi Daki Chenyen Gipe Sunamki Dola Penchir Sangye Drupasho Chedan Soki Chonamba Chanchu Bardu Dagni Kapsuchi Daki Chenyen Gipe Sunamki Dola Penchir Sangye Druparsho. All right then. I want to show you some more about the database, okay? Mainly because I think what makes our translations better than anybody's is that we can search, a million pages in a few seconds and check for things. And you look very dapper, Phil. I like this shirt. And we can, we can check things. We can make sure things are right. And so it's good if you know all the places, to use. And I would like you to talk about the dictionary you're making tomorrow, okay? So during this half hour tomorrow, you will talk about the dictionary you're working on. Maybe if there's time, then Word can talk about the dictionary he's working on. The next day, maybe, okay? So I gave you guys some warning. So I use A because it just doesn't take any time to go there. We talked about Kangyo already. We talked about Sungbom. We talked about the Tengyur. And, we've already kind of talked about the uncatalogued data, which is huge, okay? And, as we said, it's probably 15,000 books, I don't know. That we
uncatalogued? Well,
yeah.
We have, take away the 4,000 cataloged, and so there's 11,000 left.
Okay, so 11,000 books are sitting, waiting for us to put them in the database. To put them in the database, we have to find the author, we have to find their dates, we have to check all the pages are there. It takes some time because our structure of our database is by subject. So somebody has to go look at the book, read some, 10 pages of the book or something and see what's the subject. And then they have to find out the correct author, the correct dates, and then they have to put it in they have to decide where to put it in the database. And as I said, sometimes it's put into the database twice. For example, if you have a book called Prayers to Manjushri and Guanyin, then it's going to go in Manjushri and it's going to go in Guanyin. So sometimes you'll see books repeated in the library. But this here, uncatalogued data, means a huge basket of books that's been waiting for up to almost 20 years. Some of them were finished 20 years ago. And we just didn't have time to put them in the database. We need more support. We need more help. We need more people, okay? And we need more salaries. But, then this is, I think most of you don't know about this category here called reference. So this is where we put catalogs, dictionaries, and documents. Okay, and I'll show you some of the documents. So sometimes when you do a search, if you're looking for an author, if you're looking for dates, look in there. Or if you're looking for a word that you don't know, okay? So reference is catalogs, dictionaries, documents, and historical materials, okay? So these are not philosophical books. These are reference materials, okay? So catalogs is easy. There's a lot of them, okay? And you can see all these names are less than 8 letters. Why? This was done 20 years ago, okay? A lot of this work was done 20 years ago when you couldn't have more than 8 letters in a folder name. So like, I don't know, Losan Darge is Lodar, like that. And you just have to know, okay? There's some beautiful, valuable stuff. This is, by the way, all the old records of ACIP, all of our old stuff, when we used to release books on paper releases, all the paper documents are there. And if you want to know our standards, how do we write Tibetan, how do we write Sanskrit, how do we translate things, how do we make decisions, how do we catalog things, how do we input things? We have 5 steps to the input. Every book we do is input by person 1, then it's input again by person 2, then person 3 compares person 1 and person 2, then person 4 compares person 1 and 2 again, and then person 5 compares person 3 and person 4. So all of our books go through a very rigorous system. So if you want to know about that system, you can read these documents. Then here's like the Blue Annals, the greatest history book ever written in Tibet. If you want a life story of your Lama or something, you can check in there. This is one of the first books we ever did with OCR, English OCR, about 25 years ago, and it's a mess. Okay, here's Bhutan's famous history of Buddhism in India. One of the only 2 or 3 really good. These are individual lamas. Their collected works are listed in the table of contents to their particular collections. So Jetson Kapa's got 18 books in his collection. He's got about 10,000 pages. And in the beginning, there's a catalog of his works. So we preserve those. So we cut them out of the philosophical works, but we preserve them in the catalog. There's some cool stuff here. Let me see.
No Choni Lama?
We don't have Choni. It may be here. He's probably, Dr. Shadu.
Oh, Dr. Thank you.
Okay. Let me just see. These are traditional catalogs to the Kangi, which are extremely useful. And we input 3 of them. This is Derge carving, which is about 300 years ago. Hlasa carving, which is about 100 years ago. And the Tohoku catalog, which is a Japanese catalog from about almost 100 years ago. And 3 extremely important catalogs. So if you're curious about a sutra or a tantra, you go there. This is extremely valuable. These are catalogs to all the libraries in Ladakh. So Ladakh is North India on the Afghanistan side. It touches China also. This is part of India now. But traditionally, this is where Buddhism started in Tibet. This used to be Old Tibet. So Tibet wasn't Lhasa and all those places. Tibet used to be Ladakh. And it's a mountain kingdom and very hard to get to. It's like 12,000 feet. Every time we sent our people there, they got sick. A couple of people almost died. But they have 27 ancient monasteries. And each one has a library. And we got permission from the government to catalog them. And we spent, I think, 10 years there. We sent people there for 10 years. You can only go in the summer. It's blocked in the winter. And we cataloged everything. And we got the funder was a Christian. Because there was a rumor that Jesus lived there. We don't have any history of Jesus from the time he's about 15 to about the time he's 29 or something. And so there was a rumor that he was in Ladakh studying. And there's a rumor that there are books there about him, Yishu. And so the funder was actually a Christian, John Foley. And And he paid for everything for like 10 years. And we didn't find any books. But we cataloged all the Buddhist books. Yeah, there's one reference to Yishu in there in an old Drupta.
Wow.
Not actually a new Drupta, about 1800s. So, and it's a pretty weird. Okay. LC means Library of Congress. They had an extraordinary scholar there named Gene Smith, who'd worked there for 20 years or something, and he was a great scholar. And he got millions of dollars from the U.S. government to buy Tibetan books, and he printed 8,000 books in his life, and they're very valuable. And so there was no catalog, and I got the data from the Library of Congress, and I converted it to our system, and it took me years. So you can search all his catalogs according to our system. So that's Library of Congress. And it has some good historical stuff in there. Dates of lamas and stuff like that. Longdu Lama is extremely important. He was one of the earliest Tibetan lamas to make a catalog of all the books in Tibet. So he lived about 300 years ago, I think. But he was a nerd, a geek. He liked to collect information about books. So his catalogs are very useful, very important. He was a very controversial lama in his time. He had controversial viewpoints on emptiness. But he was a good librarian. MHTL is called Materials for a History of Tibetan Literature. This was compiled by Lokesh Chandra's father and Lokesh Chandra. So this is an Indian scholar who spent time in Tibet 100 years ago, 150 years ago, on a horse. And he brought out thousands and thousands of books. And his son is now 92. He's still alive. He loves us. He offered us all his books. Extremely rare. And we have a few boxes. We started bringing them. Then the Indian government stopped it. And they said these are too valuable to let out of India. So they're all in John Brady's house. But they're extremely rare ancient Sanskrit books, ancient Indian books. But this is a catalog that his father made. Okay. Mingzi is very useful for histories of Tibetan lamas. So each one of you, Adam has gone into this book and to another book, and he's cut out a biography of your lama. So the lama who wrote your book, there's a biography there's a short biography, couple pages, which I think is all you want to put in a small book like one of those books. So Adam was kind enough to do that. And we'll translate that towards the end of your... I'm not going to do it because if you quit, I waste my time. Look at this, okay? This is 20 years of work in the Mongolian National Library, okay? These are all the catalogs there, and we're still working there. We're still there. There's 200,000 Tibetan books there, and we're not finished yet. We spent 20 years. We've been paying for it for 20 years. Every time the government changes, we have to renegotiate, fight with them, bribe 10 congressmen, and it's been a real challenge. Very difficult. There's Pabonk Rinpoche. Here's all the pension lamas, first four. This is very interesting. The Sakyas are Tibetan teachers who were popular before Tsongkhapa. They started around 1200. Tsongkhapa is 1400. So for 200 years in Tibet, they were the great scholars, especially strong in logic and Vajrayogini practice, okay, which are two of our favorite subjects. So we input all of their great books. There's a thing called Sakya Kabum, which is the 5 great Sakya patriarchs. And we input all their books. We actually trained a Sakya monastery to do it, but they pooped out. I've had more monasteries poop out than succeed. But we had to finish it for them. This is a fantastic book. This is the best, Sheje Ternze, which means the treasure of noble things. And this is where you can find most of, it's 3 volumes, it's about, I don't know, 1,000 or 1,500 pages. Most of the collected works of the great lamas of the Tsongkhapa tradition are in there. So if you need a book or you're looking for something on a certain subject, you search that one. And it has great brief biographies of each teacher. So and they're accurate, which is, so if you have a question, go there, okay? This is our opus magnum. We got, when the Soviet Union broke up, they had a huge warehouse in St. Petersburg with over 100,000 Tibetan books. They didn't let anyone in there during the tough times. And then the Soviet Union collapsed, and I went there with $30,000. And we got permission to catalog it. They had no catalog. They had a really crazy system, and we spent 14 years there. I paid a team of Tibetan monks, and I paid the Russian librarians, and we paid for the heating and all the food and apartments, and we spent 14 years there, and we finished. So there's 141,000 books catalog, and it's the greatest catalog of Asian literature there is, because we took all the colophon. Colophon means at the last 5 pages of a book, they tell you who printed it, when did the Lama teach it, who are all his students, where did he learn it, who are his grandfather, and we typed all of them, 141,000 colophons all typed in. So later your students should study those and make connections between all these teachers, you see. And they have extremely rare books. They have Beijing Kangyur, Beijing Tengyur from Beijing. These are books that were bought by the Russian kings, the Tsars, hundreds of years ago, 300-400 years ago. And then when Mongolia had a revolution, they took the books from Mongolia and they killed all the monks. They killed 15,000 monks in one week, and they took all the books. Russians love books, so thank God. So they brought all the books to St. Petersburg. So that's called the Institute, okay, 141,000 books. Before that, we cataloged the University of St. Petersburg, has about 3,000 books. And it's across the river, across the Neva River. So those are the 2 great collections in Russia. And we finished it. The university took a couple of years. And so you can find, we found all of Choni Lama's books there. These are from our monastery. 2 of you are working on Choni Lama 3. Extremely important books. We found them there. We found the constitution of our monastery there was missing. And fantastic stuff, okay? But look, look how many files. This is, okay, they're not even joined together yet, okay? Somebody, if you have extra time, you can work on that. Anyway, it's a good piece of work. We still didn't have permission to scan the books. And we're hoping that Dr. Wu can work with the Chinese embassy in Russia and maybe help us to get permission to scan the books. The Russians are very like this. Upstairs is Dunhuang collection. Half of the books from Dunhuang stolen. Half stolen by British, half stolen by Russians. Some by French, some by Americans. All gone. All the best books are gone. Nothing left at Dunhuang. And these are the oldest books that we have. The oldest copy of the Diamond Cutter is in the British Museum, stolen from Dunhuang. So we would like to catalog those also, but we know it's very difficult. There, politics there is very, very difficult, So right now we're not allowed to even go there. So after 14 years, we thought after 14 years they would trust us, but.
So maybe that's why Trump got elected, is so that we can get a.
Yeah, I think Trump's going to be very helpful.
No, I'm happy.
Yeah, maybe. So in Russia in the 1920s, there was a great movement of Tibetan studies, and they're still going. They're still going. They learn Tibetan very well. They have great Sanskrit scholars, great Tibetan scholars, Russia and St. Petersburg and Moscow. So Vostokhov was one of the greatest, and he wrote a great history of Tibetan literature. And someday you should read it if you have time. And then after that, he was killed during the revolution. Okay, most of the scholars were killed, and the bodies were thrown in the river, and it ran red for 3 days. They say. But they were like us. They were very excited, young people. I mean, mostly young, and they did great work. The Monier Williams dictionary is stolen from their dictionary, and if you read the introduction to Monier Williams dictionary, Monier Williams' son defends his father against charges that he stole it from the Russians, but he did steal it from the Russians, who did a better copy. They had a better dictionary.
So that text is an English translation of
Yeah.
Vostokov's work.
No, that's not Vostokhov. It's Obermiller and some other people. There's a wonderful... oh, you mean this one is English? This is in English. Yeah, Tibetan historical literature.
Amazing.
Yale University, interesting. I was translating one of the first commentaries to Abhidharmakosha, and I had some questions about the text. It looked like some mistakes to me, but I didn't have a copy. And then I found out there's a guy named Doug Wienhoff's book.
Theos Bernard.
Theos Bernard. So he's actually from Arizona, and he was crazy. And something happened. He got very sick in Tucson. He got very sick. He was a college student, and this lama showed up, 1920, from nowhere, and he cured him. And then he said, "Go to India, go to Tibet," and he did. And he collected books, and he got to know the high people in the government. And when he left with 100 horses stacked with books, given to him by the great monasteries. So they are beautiful, beautiful, best books. And he brought them to the U.S. And then he went back during partition, when they were splitting India from Pakistan. And there was a lot of fighting going on, and he was killed. He disappeared, actually. He disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to him. There's a rumor that he survived and he went into meditation. But his wife was a Hollywood movie star who funded him. He was very smart. And I almost got a chance to do that, but I didn't do it. She gave the books to Yale University. And they're in the, what's it called? They're in a library there, which is underground. It's a bomb-proof, nuclear bomb-proof library. It's called, I forget the name of it. Yeah, and you can't take a pen in there. You can only they will give you a pencil, and you can't touch the books. They will put the book in front of you. So they have the original Bibles. They have rare books there. What's it called? Anyway, we did a catalog of it. Nobody had opened those books. When you print a Tibetan book, you cut the side of the paper with a plane, and then you have to separate the pages. And no one ever separated the pages. It means they were printed for him, and they were never opened. And they're extremely rare and extremely beautiful. And we did the first catalog, and that was almost 30 years ago. Okay. This is extremely useful for you guys. I put all the records of chronologies, so it means what year was so-and-so born, what year did Atisha come to Tibet, what year did this Chinese manuscript reach Lhasa, These are all useful, very, very useful for deciding what year things happen, so you can use that. So that's the catalogs. How much time we have?
2 minutes.
These are dictionaries which I'll go into tomorrow, okay? Because they deserve their own lecture, okay? But these are some useful dictionaries. And This is old work. This is 25 years old, 30 years old, 100 years old. There have been some better dictionaries done, and I'm going to ask Ben to talk about those. Because I don't use them, because I don't need them. But he knows about them. So these are just documents like ACIP's release manuals and things like that. Manuals. And then these are the great history books of Buddhism. Some are in English, some are in Tibetan, some, before that.
So in that year's folder, did you,
Yeah, it's mostly Tzik. It's mostly from the Tsingzu Chemo.
and you have a chart in there for all the fire, earth, iron, water.
Yeah. If you, yeah,
It's neat.
because they don't put the Christian year in most ancient books. They put this is the fire, male, sheep year. So I got I cut a table of it out, so you have those. But you can use the Tsingzu Chemo for that. That also gives the animal and the element, and the female or male. So normally an ancient book will say this was finished in the male sheep year of the water. And then that only repeats every 60 years. So you can figure out when a Lama wrote a book. Because you know when the Lama was born, and you look in that time. He didn't write it when he was 12, but he wrote it when he was 72, So you can figure out. It's kind of nice because you can figure out what year they wrote it. And somebody like Tsongkhapa, you can see the progression of his thinking because you can date the books if you have this chart. And okay, so yeah, it's cool. Cool stuff. Then we'll talk tomorrow or the next day about the Sanskrit. We are trying to reconstruct the Buddhist classics from India that were destroyed around 1200 years ago. Okay, we're trying to find old copies, and we're looking for 5,000 books. We call it the 5,000. And when we meet a sponsor, we say, we're working on the 5,000. We got 13 so far. And they're typing. We have Indians in Varanasi who are Sanskrit masters, great Sanskrit scholars. And we have a good team there. I'm visiting them next month. And they are typing in the Buddhist classics in Sanskrit. And then if you have a question about his text, for example, or your text, you can see the Sanskrit. You can check the original, okay? So, all right, let's go to, tomorrow you do. Show us how your dictionary works, okay? And you be ready the next day. These are two projects that Dr. Wu is funding. He's been working, I don't know, long time, many years, on a dictionary, and Word's been working on it. Word's dictionary includes Chinese.